When I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Put my hat up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Mars?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Johnny.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
The doctor lived next door to the janitor to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
First name's Doni, last name's Glover, in it to win it for the long haul, baby. Part 2, Baltimore City Council President Nick J. Mosby. J is for James. We might be related. How are you, sir?
First name Doni, second name Glover. I'm good today. How you doing, Doni?
Mr. President, I remember your first campaign where you came through communities like Pennsylvania Avenue. I mean, what have you learned on the campaign trail since your first campaign?
The first one that where I met and we lost. When I met you and we lost, that first one.
We lost.
Yeah. I don't know. I remember running into you. I think we were on Cumberland Street. At the time, I think I was like maybe 26 years old, 25. And, we were just going to the community, knocking on every single door, speaking to any and everybody that we could speak to kind of spread the word of like what I ultimately wanted to do and jumping into this thing called politics. I raised like $8,000. 800 of it came from my mother. She gave me money from her tax return. And, I learned a lot. I tell you one thing, when I went back, I was an electrical engineer. And, when I had to put my full-time job back on and kind of really get back focused on work, I couldn't because I just couldn't stop thinking about all the work I wanted to do for my community. So it just like created this burning desire and passion for me to really give back. And that's when I was able to, partake in a couple different boards and ran for my community association president. And, it took off from there.
So you talk about community association. My mother had three rules. Number 1, at 18, you're leaving. Number 2, don't bring no babies in here in the meantime. And number 3, own your own house. How important is home ownership to you?
Oh, it's critical. And when we talk about Baltimore City, the level of affordability, for middle class in Baltimore is still there, but it's closely approaching the stage where it's getting tougher and tougher. Many people in our communities are renting for $1,200, $1,300, $1,400, $1,500 a month, where they could literally be owning a home for $900, $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 a month. And I think that it's critically important, particularly knowing like Baltimore City's history with the Baltimore City Council ordinance that was passed in 1911 that, said Black people couldn't live in certain parts of our city.
White people either.
white people either. Yeah. But it was geared towards where we couldn't go. It wasn't really
Yeah,
necessary about where they could go. They didn't want to
that's
necessarily
true.
come with us. And that ultimately set up from 1936. The map that the federal government released, which was like the red line map, which all bank institutions kind of utilize. I think an interesting stat is between 1934 and 1968, the Housing Act. Only 2% of all of the mortgages given out by private institutions and banks were given to Black folks. 2%.
2%.
So basically, for that 34 years, we were completely barred from buying a home the conventional way. And many of us knew the importance of real estate at the time, and we had to do unconventional things. And whether it was different loan sharks or just different means of like acquiring property. But just think about that. Not until like 1968, I think that's the Housing Act, is when we start to kind of this holistic or collective enterprise view of us being able to purchase homes the conventional way. And then we look at, again, the high interest rates. We already look at the disproportionate amount of disinvestment in our communities. We kind of couple all of those things into it. And that now we're faced with something. And, I think that Baltimore City is the last city in America where Black folks with traditionally and historically Black communities still have the ability of purchasing property and keeping like that cultural connectivity to the communities that we know. So it's not like a DC or Brooklyn or some of the other parts that we've seen a significant amount of gentrification. And I think that it's important for government to be very intentional in accepting responsibility, but very intentional in developing solutions around how do we ensure that that does not happen. I uplifted this thing called House Baltimore, where I wanted to use $641 million of the American Rescue Plan money to really go into North and to go into East and West Baltimore and provide opportunity for affordable home ownership for our legacy residents, our bus drivers, our paraprofessionals, the folks that live in our communities, but have been dealing with the crime, the grime, the blight for far too long, but understanding, knowing that they can own a piece of those areas, particularly as we see in like real estate really taking off in the city of Baltimore. Unfortunately, the administration pushed against that and ultimately passed their own dollar house program that did not come with the capital incentives for our folks to be able to fix up the homes the way that ARPA could have done so. And I'll say this last point. I've been talking about this a lot, and I'll continue to talk about it. The way gentrification works, particularly when government is infusing or going down a path of gentrification, is what we'll do is government will take a pot of money and they'll go to like affordable housing advocates, affordable housing groups, and they'll say, hey, here's this pot of money, fix up these homes, identify folks that can rent below a certain AMI, area medium income. And those folks get there and we start fixing up the homes, and it starts to stabilize those blocks. It starts to stabilize those communities. Well, when that happens, private money starts to come in. All the speculators or folks that have been sitting on these vacants, they start to come in. They start to fix up their properties. And when they start to fix up their properties, the property value in the area does what? It increases. And when the property area in that value increases, now what's going to happen to the renters? Their rent starts to increase and they can't afford and they're displaced. So the idea is when government is assisting on going in and stabilizing communities, particularly on the backs of Black and brown folks from the stake of affordable rental units, there should be rent control. Because the reality is it was those individuals who lived through the crime, grime, and blight who ultimately helped to stabilize those areas that should be able to live in those areas for, the foreseeable future. And not be priced out from a rent perspective in 5, 10, 15 years. And again, we've seen this all across the country. And Baltimore is in a very unique position where we can ensure that it doesn't happen to our city. But it really takes like strong leadership and folks that are willing to kind of go against the grain and think outside of the box. And I think a lot of times we get these flashy new programs and initiatives, but we do not think about the unintended consequences. And when the unintended consequences is impactful to Black folks, we certainly don't think about it from a bureaucratical perspective.
Do you think the Dollar House program was brought out simply because this is an election year?
I mean, I can't say that. I don't want to talk to the motivation of the mayor or the administration. What I will say is this Dollar House program, and it's the Dollar House, and I voted against it, pales in comparison to the one that I pushed forward and that the council initiated, and we had access to $641 million. I mean, the one thing I tell folks all the time is, like, imagine if we took that 600 with anything. Like, if I give you $10, I give you $1 billion. You can decide to spend the money, or you can decide to invest it, right? With that $641 million, imagine if had we gone to the philanthropic community, we've gone to private industry, but we tried to say, okay, we're going to take this $641 million and we're going to try to get it up to $1 billion, right? And we're all going to be around the strategic plan of going after and tackling vacants and doing it in a responsible way of growing our communities where we get providing affordable home ownership for the folks that have been living in these communities, for the folks that are dealing with the residual effects of racial redlining. Imagine it, just take for a second, imagine if we decided to do that. That is the type of out of the box strategic solution that I really wanted to do with the money, and we had the ability to do so. So, I'm more for that vein because, just saying like, hey, I can sell your house for $1, but not putting up any capital money to ensure that I'm able to renovate. Correct. So if you remember the Dollar House program, we're essentially giving folks $60,000. So say a house is valued at $200,000 for the fix up, right? And it's 1,100 or 1,200 square feet, which is a lot of homes in East and West Baltimore. That $200,000 in renovation, now you get the $60,000. You only have an amortized mortgage of $140,000. That's cheaper than most folks rent throughout the city, particularly in a time when interest rates were so low, right? It only made sense for us to aggressively go after it this way. And, it's a lot of times we get once in a lifetime opportunities. And I really think that this was a once in a lifetime opportunity to create generational change that, Baltimore is the last city where, again, from a Black perspective, Black folks can plant their flag of equity, of ownership, in a way that you can't do it in any other great American city. And, I think we missed a huge opportunity for really pouring in communities that, again, have been disproportionately disinvested in by the federal government, by the state, by the city. And coming out of COVID was a unique opportunity to kind of correct some of the wrong in the past. So we also had a repair bill. So, I always said the biggest travesty when we talk about economics and we specifically talk about the racial wealth gap is, you got a house in Emerson Village versus maybe a house in Valley Forge that was built at the same exact time with the same material, with the same design, by the same contractors. Everything's the same. And you look at the way that property has assessed in comparison to the property in Emerson Village. And again, when we're talking about disproportionate amount of disinvestment, when we talk about the residual effects of policies that are just steeped in racism, that's why you see that. So a property, in Emerson Village might be, $120,000, where the other property is now worth $400,000 or $500,000. That is real money that fits into this racial wealth gap. That's real money that provides folks the ability to provide upward mobility for their young folks to go to college, or additional money to invest in additional real estate. But all of that has been taken away because government has intentionally not invested in Black areas. And, we have to do as much as possible to kind of peel that onion back and try to develop the solutions and the programs to kind of erase some of the wrong from the past.
Yesterday, we talked about your high school days where you learned that X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. I told you I had to go to summer school to memorize that formula.
Yeah.
How important is education to us today?
Oh, it's critical. When we talk about public safety, education really sits at the foundation. of what we're talking about. And, you know, a lot of times, you know, when we talk about crime, it's about being tough on crime, but it's really not about being tough on crime. It's about being smart on crime, particularly smart when it comes to our juveniles. So, you know, I've been working on some research and dealing with the state folks of gathering something called longitudinal data. So it's basically, you'll be able to pull data as it relates to our young folks and track it back to their school days without identifying who they are. So what I asked the folks to do was look at all of our young folks that are caught up in the juvenile system in the city of Baltimore and give me, you know, their chronic absenteeism in the first, second, and third grade. And the numbers were astonishing. You know, about 85 to 89% were chronically absent in the first, second, and third grade.
What is chronically absent?
Missing at least 20% of school in an individual year.
Could you stay home 20% of your days? Would your mother let you stay home?
I couldn't stay home 20 minutes out of my day. My mother, I think maybe literally, I had the chicken pox when I was like in the 6th grade. And I may miss one additional day in high school. But other than that, I can't imagine a day where I didn't make it to school.
It wasn't any missing class.
It
wasn't even a thought in your mind.
It wasn't even. My mother would, if I had a doctor's appointment, my mother would make sure I went to school, checked in,
and
she'd take me out, go to doctor's appointment, and then if we could come back, she made me come back to school. But you know, but you have a 6, 7, 8-year-old that's missing 20, 30, 40, 50% of school. Like, the red flags are there. Like, this is a child that obviously from an environmental perspective, there's some concerns there. So I don't know if there's wraparound services or social services we can provide to the family, but you know, it's also up to us as a community. I mean, you know, able-bodied.
I got to jump in. Friday, I saw these 2 young ladies, 13, middle of the day. I said, hey, because I'm that guy.
Yeah.
Hey, there's no school today?
Yeah.
Are we taking off today?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know what to say, bro.
I mean, because we also understand and know that when our kids get so far behind in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, it makes it that much more difficult to catch up. And, you know, particularly for our young men, when they get behind, a lot of times what we start to see is behavioral issues and behavioral problems. So again, you know, the question was, you know, education is foundation to everything, particularly as it relates to public safety. I think coming out of COVID, there was a huge miss of our urban educational institutions. And I'll say for 2 reasons. One, you know, coming out of COVID, there was so much learning lost during that time. It was ridiculous to say Nick was in the 9th grade before COVID. Now he's coming back and he's going to be in 11th grade because of virtual learning. Like, that was ridiculous, right? The reality is what we should have done statewide and what I called for and asked for is for all kids to be retested. And if Nicholas tests on the 8th grade, I should be focused on my education associated with the 8th grade. Don't just elevate me from 9th to 11th because I've been out of school in this virtual environment for, a year and a half. I mean, and we know through real data that Black and brown kids from a learning loss perspective was significantly higher than our counterparts. And the reason why is just access to resources. You know, whether it's folks that were in private school and the way that they had private school set up, whether it's folks that was able to do their own tutoring or training because they weren't essential workers, you know, working 40 hours a week, 80 hours a week.
And you notice because at Poly, to miss one day.
Oh, yeah.
You felt like you were behind. I felt like I was behind a whole week. Because
you
got to go, you got to catch up with these assignments because everything is built on what was done yesterday. We know that one day, 20 days missing from the A course, you're going to fail, son.
You're done. Unless you're some genius. You're some genius or your parents are at home being able to teach you. Yeah. So we missed a huge opportunity by not retesting all of our young folks and then bringing them back to where they were and letting them start right where they were, right? We should have given the opportunity, particularly for high school students, to have one additional year in high school. But the second point I would say is, we gotta teach to our kids. So if I have a child and this is what held me back, I know, in middle school, but if I have a child that is on a certain level, say we're in the 5th grade, but I'm in a 4th grade reading level, I shouldn't be in a 5th grade reading class. I should be with other folks that maybe my age, maybe not, that are on a 4th grade reading level, because it's more efficient for the teacher and it's definitely more efficient for the student. This idea that we have like grade-based teaching and learning is a thing of the past, and we have to become more efficient, more sound, more innovative as it relates to what we're doing and pouring into our young folks. And, I think what we learned coming out of COVID, again, is from a virtual learning perspective, there are ways and opportunities for us to do that. That's going to benefit Doni, that's going to benefit Nick, to meet us where we are when we're in class. So I would say, a couple things about just being smart on education and ensuring that we're really providing the opportunities for our young folks to live out their full potential is us being smart on education and smart on crime. And that's the foundation of what we need to do. If we're able to bring up this next generation and, through the blueprint in Kerwin, we put a lot of money, particularly in early childhood education, and we've seen significant gains in the city of Baltimore. We're actually outpacing the state. But if we keep that up, particularly with those cohorts and those classes, the idea is in 12 years, at the end of this rainbow of public education, we'll be putting folks in position to go to college or position to take on the jobs of tomorrow in the city of Baltimore. That should be our aim. That should be our sole focus and goal. And I think that's how you sustainably drive down crime.
You spent some time in Annapolis.
Yeah.
In 1973, the Maryland State Lottery came on board. The number one promise was money for education.
Yeah.
$15 billion at least has come through the Maryland State Lottery. Yet, well, let me slow down. We have a new baseball stadium, a new football stadium, yet we have classrooms, as Aaron Mabin showed us on social media, that had icicles on the window. No heat in the winter, no air in the warmer months. Tell me about Baltimore City Public Schools, the state of education. I mean, we're renovating the stadiums and we ain't renovating the schools.
Well, I mean, that it's a lot in that question, Doni. What I will say is, when we talk about school renovation from an urban district perspective, I mean, really anywhere else in the country, you'll be hard pressed to find a place that's built 30, soon to be 30 plus schools in a matter of like 8 years. And Baltimore City has done that through, if you remember that bottle tax and through all the work that folks did in Annapolis to kind of pour money because the level of disinvestment to this really aging infrastructure. Now, 30 plus schools doesn't change the entire footprint or portfolio of the school system. However, it is a really aggressive plan. I think over $2 billion. And now we're going to have Emerson that's going to be completely redone, City, Poly, and one other school. Can't think of the name right now. So, when we talk about, all of the investment that we put into the schools, it's been a significant push forward. Now it hasn't corrected all the issues. It's not going to correct all the issues, but there has been a tremendous amount of work there. When you talk about the lottery, and the thing that I learned in Annapolis is a thing called supplement versus supplanting of funding, right? And so a lot of times we come up with these great ideas. We say, oh, well, it's going to go towards this. But if you're putting the money towards that area like education, and then taking the general funds that were going to fund that and moving them over to do other things, you really haven't changed it. So it's really about developing ways of, we don't want to supplant, we want to supplement, right? So what we did from a Kerwin perspective, the blueprint, we decided to come up with something because of the lottery called the lockbox, meaning all the money that is intended to go towards the blueprint for education goes into this one fund that can't be touched for anything else. And the law says all the existing funding must maintain at the same level, so it doesn't supplant it. That did not happen with the lottery. Now we got this we're getting this reinvestment money because of the recreational cannabis law change that leaders of a beautiful struggle fought for. And when they brought it to me, what we did on the city level is we created a reparations commission that's going to take in the money and ultimately distribute the money based off of state law. But the second thing we did was develop our own lockbox here in the city of Baltimore. So in November, voters are going to be able to go out and vote for this reparations fund that's going to be locked for all the money that comes in from this reinvestment act from the state, or any future reparation type of money from the federal, state, or city government goes into that lockbox, and it will not be supplanted by existing services that's in the general fund. So that's the way you get around supplanting money when it's intended. So when people come with great ideas, just again, understanding policy, say, okay, I know you said that this is going towards, say, rec and parks to build new rec centers. Let's lock this money off to know that all this money is going towards what you told me is going to, but that shouldn't affect the money that has already been there year after year after year. And that's what we did not do with the lottery.
Now, I got to take you to task on this. I understand the $31 million. Martin O'Malley will never let us forget all of the money for the 21st century schools. But
that was SRB.
I thought he was governor.
Oh, you're right. But I mean, on the city level, we passed the bottle tax. That was the big fight at the time.
But I'm just saying, here in Sandtown, Pender Hughes is closed. Salvation Army is going to get that. George Kelson, which got a new library during Freddie Gray, that's closed. All we're left with is this Sandtown Winchester Academy, which, by the way, used to be named George Kelson. So we lost 2 elementary schools. I know over where, you rest your head, they have the Dorothy Height. Yeah. But I'm not even sure the kids get to use Dorothy Height. Remember back in the day, John Eager Howard was like, those were the baddest players in West Baltimore. They practiced there. But are the schools as much a part of the community as they were when we were growing up? It's almost like, they don't let the little rough kids from White Lock come to Dorothy Height.
Nah, I hope it's not like that. I mean, I think that there's been this battle in recent years between the school system and recs and parks. So a lot of the gyms that we looked at as rec centers weren't really rec centers. They had kind of like MOUs with the school system, and we've gone through, and it's really been case by case. And since there's so much control of the school and autonomy to the principal, it's really working with the principal and working with the community to kind of keep things at bay. The problem of so many schools shutting down, Doni, throughout the city is just population. So, as Baltimore,
Antonio said, and I hated him for saying that.
It's the truth, though.
It's as soon as we get the money, now you're saying it's not enough of us. But when I look at the news, these are exactly the places where kids are getting killed.
Just the theory of numbers. Like, so when we look at like our population, we were close to 1 million folks in the city. Now we're a little under 600,000. I don't know where the number is going to be. And as population has declined, so has the attendance and population of our school. And it's significantly. So when you talk about operating a school with a full building, you talk about all of the utility, lights, the requirements from a Comar perspective, the different teachers and things of that nature. The reality and the theory is, and it makes sense just based off numbers, when you combine and co-locate, you'll be able to put out a better product, and it's more effective, more efficient, more money goes directly in the classroom into the student, as opposed to operating buildings that are, say, 30 or 35 or 40% vacant. And that is the issue in many of our schools. They kind of, you asked me the question, you said, how important are the schools to the community? They kind of have like a symbiotic relationship because as we've seen the decay of our communities, the disproportionate amount of disinvestment, as we've seen folks move out of our communities and the vacancies in our communities through all these vacant homes, that has a direct impact to those neighborhood schools. And as those neighborhood schools have gotten less resources because they have less students in the per pupil funding, it's harder to operate them. And it makes more sense for the students, for the teachers, for the school environment to combine it. And that was ultimately the consolidation plan that the school system came out with. And, ultimately that's why the schools that you named in Santana were shut down. I mean, we had the same thing in West Side. So, the kids are coming all the way from when they were going to West Side all the way now down to Dorothy Heights. So, because it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to function John Eager Howard at 30-40% vacancy and West Side at 30-40% vacancy. And when you looked at West Side and you looked at John Eager Howard, the schools were in horrible shape. So we got to fix up one. So they fixed up John Eager Howard, renamed it to Dorothy Heights, a brand new 21st century state-of-the-art school. And now it's at, 85-90% capacity. And most of the money now gets to go directly into the classroom versus functioning, a building that you have to pay utility costs for that's not really full at all.
Are you ready to be mayor?
I'm ready to do what the city wants me to do. I'm running for city council president. I absolutely love my job. I know that there's so much work that needs to happen from a legislative perspective. I tell people all the time, when I went to Annapolis, I really learned how a legislative body should interact and work, particularly as it relates to from a policy perspective. And I think
I say that because the last city council president, when that question was posed to him, said, I don't want to be mayor. I want to go back and become city council president.
Yeah.
And we have never heard that in the history of blackness. So I was just qualifying to make sure that you are here for an upwardly bound trajectory.
Well, what I would say is there's a lot of work that needs to take place on the council. I really talked about professionalizing the council in a way that we have been seeing it, us developing substantive legislation, kind of like the House Baltimore Dollar House package that we put together and we worked really hard to get to. I think, but there's structural things like when it comes to the Board of Estimates, ensuring that, that there's a Board of Estimates that's functioning to the best interest and through best practices. And that's not with the mayor having 3 seats out of 5. That's with having a balanced board. So I think there's a lot of things that has to take place like that from a legislative perspective. And I think that, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think I'm the person in the best position in city government to lead a legislative body, in a way that is critical for the future of Baltimore. And that's why I'm running for re-election for city council president. And, when I'm successful, those are the things that I'm going to do.
When Brandon Scott became mayor, one of the first contracts he signed was roughly $43 million. And it was for the law firm, and anyone can correct me if they think I'm wrong, that Jim Shade was a member of, Venable. One of the first contracts he signed as mayor. Venable went on to negotiate the Baltimore Gas and Electric takeover of the utilities, the underground utilities. What'd you think of that whole BG&E thing where the white women were on television getting locked up for defending their homes and they didn't want the mechanisms on the front of their houses? They felt as though they were dangerous.
So the conduit issue and that issue, 2 separate things, but kind of still symbolically connected. Obviously folks know that I stood up, aggressively against the administration about their stance on the conduit issue. This kind of takes me back because when I was on the council before and I was running for mayor, I brought this issue up that PG&E aggressively wanted to buy our conduit system. Then, unfortunately for folks that are interested in moving down that direction, I probably have the most experience of doing it. I used to do interduct design and conduit design for a very large corporation that was putting fiber throughout the state of Maryland, and it was literally my team that did the design. All the engineering assistants worked under me, and so I had a lot of experience in that space, and I knew the value of it. You know, someone can lay a price tag of $100 million, over it, and say like, "Hey, we'll give you $100 million for this asset," but when you do the calculation of what that means in 10, 15, 20 years, that $100 million is pennies on the dollar. It's kind of like the way that we gave up Friendship Airport to the state, and what that would mean to our city's economy today if we still own Thurgood BWI Airport. So, that's why I was like in a position to kind of fight aggressively and really try to communicate to folks that, that this was a horrible situation and idea. And, unfortunately, the administration won out. I think that, again, going back to what I just said before, the Board of Estimates, doing a reconfiguration of the Board of Estimates is so important to good governance in the city of Baltimore.
Are you pleased with your advocacy for minority business enterprises, Mr. Deese here alludes?
I think so. I mean, I think if, I tell folks to try to always tune into the Board of Estimates. I think
Wednesday mornings,
not every Wednesday, it's typically every other. But when you look at, I would say a couple different things. When you look at the contracts that we've forced the administration to withdraw, when you look at the level of dialogue and discourse, when we get them deferred and we really put things out plainly, and then when you look at the changing of the product that comes to us. So if you look at the beginning of my term as city council president and the types of things that they would send over to us, with minority goals waived, with individuals with track records of not living up to the minority goals that were set to be accomplished, just the way that our agencies functioned. When we look at the stuff that then all the work that we had to do week by week by week to now where we are today, it has completely changed. Obviously that's something that you can't quantify or provide like qualitative data. But if anyone has been astute on the Board of Estimates and just kind of see the pipeline, that doesn't mean that stuff doesn't come up, stuff doesn't get through. We're fighting right now. We're fighting this payment in lieu of taxes for these apartment buildings on Pennsylvania Avenue. It's like 508 units in the scattered site where the city's trying to reduce the taxes to this owner from New York who's saying that they don't have any plans on renovating the units, and the units have not been renovated in 40 years. I held that up. This has been an issue that I've been fighting on the Board of Estimates for quite some time. I believe this is like the 5th deal that this administration has put forth. So I said, you know what, before you guys vote, why don't you come out to Pennsylvania Avenue and take a tour of some of the conditions that we expect our folks to live in, and see if you're comfortable with now voting on it this way. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go with this thing tomorrow. Again, I get 1 out of 5 votes. The mayor gets 3 out of 5 votes. But those are the things that I ask folks to tune into, because, obviously when the community is involved, that's where my extra vote is. It's not just me sitting there, kind of, communicating the concerns, but that is a horrible, horrible deal. There's no reason that the city should be involved in it. And it's my hope that the administration does it the right way.
How would you gauge the state of Baltimore?
Baltimore is a very, very interesting place. On paper, you see the water to our east, mountains to our west. You see us, 45-minute drive from the nation's capital, 3 hours from the Big Apple. When you talk about culture, we have it. When we talk about history, we certainly have it. When we talk about medical institutions, kind of key assets, universities, we have all of that. There's 4 international airports within 100 miles. We couldn't be positioned better on the East Coast. When we look at our infrastructure as it relates to like our homes and our neighborhoods, all that's there, right? So if you itemize all that on a sheet of paper, right, you would look at it a certain way. But then when you look at some of the other statistics, particularly in Black communities, as it relates to health disparities, education, area median income index, and comparable to the rest of our region of where we sit at, crime, when we throw all that other stuff, it makes absolutely no sense. And that's where I think that it's this tale of two cities approach that as government, we have to be very intentional and go after and kind of challenge, why we have the issues that we kind of have, while not forgetting about all the assets that we have access to. And, that's when I talk to particularly Black folks, I'm like, don't sell your grandmother's home. Don't sell your mother's home. Buy properties in Baltimore. Because if we don't, other folks that aren't even from the state of Maryland, sometimes aren't even from this country, because they understand and know all the valuable stuff that I'm talking about. I mean, listen, but in the next couple years, between what's currently just finished last year versus what's underway being constructed versus what's being designed in the central business district alone of downtown, not even including the Dave Bramble Harbor Place, $7 billion. It's about $7 billion in development going on. Just by happenstance, Baltimore is going to continue to grow. Our economy is going to continue to grow. And either we decide to be at the table and be part of it, or we sit back and watch it happen. And I think it's my job as government to do, one, is educate our folks about it, but also two, try to develop intentional policies to ensure that the folks that have been living with the crime, the grime, and the blight for far too long because their communities were disproportionately disinvested in, have a chance to have a seat at the table.
How has it been being a government official, an elected official, and watching this transition from pre-Freddie Gray, zero tolerance, lock them up, throw away the key, gun trace task force, to this 2024 Baltimore? What's changed?
Again, I think that when I'm a big believer on when we talk about change outcome and how we've seen incremental improvements in certain areas. I think from an enterprise perspective, holistically, not much has changed. The outcome is pretty much still the same. You have pockets of improvements through our communities, but are those pockets with the folks that were legacy residents of those communities? Again, I'm excited about the level of construction that we've had, with our schools and working with the Maryland Stadium Authority. But we haven't had one of those schools that's been built with a prime minority contractor. So things have moved down. Certain things have moved down in the right direction, but holistically, and kind of the really big variables of this equation, everything is pretty much the same. And that is of concern. And I talk about it all the time. I'll continue to talk about it. But that's why, like as simple as whether it's BG&E conduit issue on the Board of Estimates or this deal where this New York shop has purchased these apartments on Pennsylvania Avenue for $33 million and now wants a bigger tax incentive. As long as we continue to do things like that, are we really serious about change? And that's what I have to question when we make decisions like that. That's why
there was another huge project, and I'm not sure where you were at the time. I don't remember if you were on the council, but Port Covington, when Port Covington went down, was the guy that owned it. You know, he was interacting with many council people, and I'm just saying, what happened to all of that momentum? You know, I feel like I was lied to as a Baltimore City resident, but you know,
Well,
Port
look,
Covington.
so there were two TIFs during that time, Donnie. It's Harborview, which is where you see the Exelon building at, you know, with the building all around there. And then there was Port Covington. So if I could remember, I'm just going off memory, but if I could remember, Harborview was like for $80 million in a TIF. And the way a TIF is, it's called tax incremental financing, where someone says, hey, we need bonding capacity to build this infrastructure, the roads, the sewer system, to do everything. We're going to go out, we're going to get a bond, which is basically like a loan. And we're going to pay the debt. We're going to pay off that loan over the course of, you know, X amount of period. Well, while we're paying off that loan, we're going to take that, as opposed to paying our taxes, we're going to pay this bond off. So that's how, like, that's basically, to simplify, what a TIF is. So it was like an $80-some million TIF there. And then I think it was like close to 300 or over 300 million at Port Covington. I voted against Harborview and I voted for Port Covington. And the reason I voted against Harborview, one, because they utilized the disparity in numbers of Perkins Home to expand the enterprise zone. And we're getting really into the weeds here. To expand the enterprise zone and focus zone to get additional tax incentives from the state. And again, it's just like I said, you expect Black and brown folks to stabilize communities that they can no longer stay in after you increase the value of those communities. It was the same way. We were basically taking the pain and the plight of the folks in Perkins and spreading it down to the waterfront, to folks knowing that they weren't going to be able to ever afford to live down there, and not really addressing Perkins. Now, there's been a significant amount of work that's done in Perkins, you know, with over the past couple of years, and there was a ribbon cutting yesterday, but that still doesn't take away from where we were at the time. So that's why I voted no there. And Port Covington was different. You know, they promised on-site, I mean, not to promise, but through an MOU, you know, on-site affordable housing in perpetuity at like 20% of the units. When you look at the level of minority participation there, it outpaces any other major project throughout the city of Baltimore. When you look at the level of minority businesses and the incubator and all the space that they were providing, you know, all of that kind of added up to what I thought was a responsible approach to, if it were not for the infrastructure dollars to build out a landmass like that, it wouldn't get done. So, you know, I don't regret voting against Harborview and voting for Port Covington. But
is Port Covington coming along as you thought it would?
Well, no, I mean, with the economy hit and then with COVID, you know, basically Port Covington has been scaled down significantly. So, you know, the level of square footage that they were talking about putting there, and the level of rental units and commercial space, even the headquarters, the Under Armour International headquarters, scaled down significantly. But that still doesn't stop the affordable rental. That still doesn't stop the minority participation down there. So there's still a tremendous amount of good that has come out of it, but it's not the bells and whistles or platinum plan that they originally came up with before the pandemic and the economy hit.
I'm glad we have a person like you there at City Hall who can think. Sometimes racism sickens me to my core, and I don't think I could be in your position, because the North Avenue, the old North Avenue in me would want to come out and tap somebody upside the head. But what about this most recent project labor agreement?
So, you know, that's a big controversy in my race. That is, I tell folks all the time, you know, this election is about comparing and contrasting, you know, my record, my experience versus my opponent's record and their experience. And I think if you combine theirs and compared it to mine, their records and experience certainly pales in comparison to what I've been able to deliver and perform for the city. But They are also have different ideological views about our city. So this project labor agreement basically ensures that money that job projects that are publicly financed, where there's public dollars in it, has to have like a project labor agreement ultimately with the unions. And it requires that shops that work on these jobs are union shops. Now, yesterday on a radio show, we had a discussion with my opponents, and I asked them to just name me 5 union shops in the city of Baltimore that are minority owned. And they can't. You know why they can't? Because there aren't any. The reality is when we're talking about any type of agreement from a procurement perspective, particularly with these large projects that are city funded, prioritization should be local hiring. We should be ensuring that the companies that we're getting involved have a track record of either developing apprenticeship programs, putting money in the apprenticeship programs to ensure that they're creating a pipeline for employees in the future. They have a track record of hiring and retaining residents of our city to kind of work these jobs. And they show a commitment to other maybe social things like ex-offender programs and things of the nature. They drum all of this up to say that you need a PLA to do that, but you don't. That's just the procurement policy and the procurement process that's in way. The only difference between what I'm suggesting and what their suggestion is, you have a third party that now you have all of these shops will have to pay into their pension funds and everything and the like. With the reality is none of their companies are Baltimore based. None of them, when you look at their roles, I would say it would be hard pressed to see 5% of the employees living in the city of Baltimore. 5% might be a stretch. And what you do is you're going to lock in seeing trucks from West Virginia, Carroll County, Harford County, driving in Baltimore, working these jobs every single day. Like, it makes absolutely no sense if local hiring is a priority of yours and minority women, local businesses are a priority of yours. We don't need to do it through a project labor agreement. You do it through the procurement process.
Any final thoughts, Mr. President?
The only thing I'd say to folks is it's a critical election. This is not about flashy ads or rhetoric or platitudes. This is literally about, this is where the rubber's going to meet the road, and we have to identify, clear leadership that's going to do that. I tell folks all the time, I'm still a little kid from Northeast Baltimore that grew up in a 3-bedroom house with 6 women, watched my mother catch 2 and 3 buses every single day as I slept on the top bunk. My older sister slept on the bottom bunk. So I was like 14 years old. My mother went to work every single day in Social Security to put food on our table and provide for me this amazing opportunity. Being the first person in my family to graduate from college, coming back to the city. I tell folks I've seen the worst of the city, but I've also seen the best of the city. I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve as your city council. But don't forget, I'm the councilman that banned the box, ensuring that ex-offenders' rights are upheld. People thought the sky was going to fall, and many people took out op-eds, and it was very divisive at the time. I was able to get that bill over, and I was happy and excited. Went to the state. I was able to do that statewide, but I was also able to ensure that folks were no longer losing their homes based off of faulty water bills. I was able to ensure that we're protecting Park Heights in a way that Park Heights need to be protected by ensuring that the Preakness stayed there for the foreseeable future. And when I got to City Hall back as your city council president, we brought local control of our police department, the first time since the Civil War, back to City Hall, as well as passed, very substantive bills like the inclusionary housing bill that's going to ensure affordable housing for all publicly funded projects. Look, my opponents are great people. They love their family, they love the city, they love their community. But now we need someone with the level of skill set, know-how, expertise to kind of get the job done in this critical juncture of the city of Baltimore. There's been no secret that over the past couple of years, there's been a tremendous amount of personal challenges and adversity in my life. What I will say is every single day I've shown up, I've done my job. Again, when you compare my experience to my opponents, it's just simply not comparable. So Baltimore, I absolutely love you. I'm for Baltimore. I'm the only candidate in this race from Baltimore. I've called Baltimore my home my entire life. Absolutely love the city, and I ask that you allow me to continue to fight for you.
Yeah, you can't let nobody from not from here come here and beat you. You know, this your home base.
It's
You
my
can't.
home, man.
You got to keep that jab out there, sir.
Hey, man, he getting all that money from Western Massachusetts. That's funding that campaign. So we'll see. I'm fighting. We'll continue to fight.
We're proud of you.
I'm proud of you, Donnie.
Yes,
Hey,
sir.
man, before we go off, man, that intro, that's serious, man. I could watch that again.
Dr. Michael Zolikoff says, we don't love poor black people. When I think of you at North and Fulton years ago on that soapbox, and you shared yesterday why you went to North Avenue, we've not seen your opponents on West North Avenue, East North Avenue for that matter. I understand that one of them went to Penn North one time, I think during the last election cycle, but we know you're comfortable with North Avenue. The only thing that I would ask of you is that, can you give us one lane of traffic back? Can you make them people take North Avenue? We got one lane going west, going east, man. One lane.
Hey,
Well,
Donnie.
bike lane ain't no bikes.
Donnie, this gonna get controversial, but that rapid bus lane plan was the former governor Larry Hogan's solution to sending $900 million back of red line money for the red line. So that was the whole rapid bus solution that Governor Hogan came up with. It ain't rapid. No, it's not. We need
it right there. You oversee. How does it feel minus the traffic? How does it feel looking out your door and seeing development at Murder Mall?
Oh, I mean, I lived through Murder Mall for quite some time. I purchased my house back in 2004, and to have a black man from the community whose mother used to operate a business in Madison Park do the development. I mean, it's stuff that we haven't seen in the city of Baltimore, but stuff that should become more normalized to us. So I'm excited for David Bramble and for the community and what that development is going to mean over the course of next couple of years. Yeah, he still lives in the heart of West Baltimore.
That's beautiful.
It is. Good story.
Yes,
for all of us. For you too, Doni.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We wish you the absolute best. And thank you for your support of bmorenews.com.
Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir. Up to date, down tomorrow, do your day, and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it, regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning, world.